5 ways Christian Horner is ruining Red Bull. Christian Horner has done a hell of a job getting the Formula 1 team Red Bull Racing where it is now. Unfortunately, with the direction he's pushing the team in recent years, he's ruining everything that team has stood for. His enormous drive and ambition have set him on a path that will see the once audacious racing team turn into the exact thing they used to despise. I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. 5. Lack of loyalty. The Red Bull team started with Dieter Mateschitz and his friend Helmut Marko buying the struggling Jaguar team for £1. Helmut Marko knew Christian Horner, who owned a Formula 3000 team called Arden, and wanted to buy a trailer of him. Helmut Marko put Horner's name forward to Mateschitz for the team principal role, but Mateschitz wasn't convinced, so they also hired Günther Steiner, who worked at Jaguar before they took over. It turned out that Horner grabbed the opportunity given by Helmut Marko with both hands, and he became the youngest team principal ever. Steiner went on to have great success in a TV show called Drive to Survive. Helmut Marko was in charge of hiring the drivers for the team and later both teams when they also bought Minardi to turn into the sister team for young talent. The lack of loyalty from Horner to Marko came to surface during the overblown row about Marko's comments in September 2023. Marko talked about Sergio Perez not being as consistent as European drivers because he's from South America. This was wrong because he's from North America, and apparently you can't criticize a driver based on where he's from. It surprised me that such a big deal was made out of this, with other team principals mixing in it as well, saying it went against inclusivity and such. Still, I've read similar comments from Montoya saying European drivers are mentally weak, and nobody batted an eyelid. The fallout felt a little too organized for me, and as it later turned out, Horner had cause to push Marko out of that position as advisor. Horner has the Thai fraction on his side, and simply put, Marko, backed up by the Austrian fraction, was preventing that. Now, I'm not against Horner getting the promotion he wants, but not at the cost of the man who hired him and losing what the team always stood for. I believe Horner stabbed Marko in the back, but nobody sees it that way because Horner is way closer to the British media than Helmut Marko is. Horner could have shown patience and waited until Marko retired out of his own free will. Horner couldn't wait that long because Marko is in charge of the drivers, which caused friction. Which is point 4. 4. Hiring outside the Red Bull pool. Red Bull has always had an amazing big pool of junior drivers to pick from for their Formula 1 teams. The list of drivers with a Red Bull past is huge, and I think that's something to applaud Red Bull for. Unfortunately, Christian Horner and his ambitions have led to Red Bull hiring drivers outside of the Red Bull pool of drivers. Being a young Red Bull junior isn't as promising anymore as it was a few years ago. It all started with Sergio Perez replacing Alex Albon. Now, Perez was a solid midfield driver, and him getting fired from Racing Point was a crime in my opinion. However, it turned out he did not cope well with how the RB16B, the RB18, the RB19 and the RB20 behaved. This was obvious in all the mid-season slumps he had, where he was raking up the damage count with all his crashes and was not much help to Verstappen. Here's what Horner said in September 2023, reacting to the Marko Checo scandal. He said, "Perez is a massively popular member of our team. He's an important member of our team. I pushed very hard to sign him for the 2021 season. We have a huge following around the world and we take that very seriously, very responsibly. And I think that the fan following, not just Checo has, but the team has and Formula 1 has, we're very conscious of." This huge following is why Perez still has that seat. For reasons I will talk about later. There is another driver who has one of the 4 Red Bull seats who is immensely popular but isn't shown much on track either. That driver is of course Daniel Ricciardo. Now, before everybody starts unfollowing and writing angry comments, I have nothing against Perez and Ricciardo. It's just that Red Bull didn't used to care about public opinions and definitely didn't let the team be run by popularity contests. They were known to be ruthless, harsh and direct. Another driver who I like, but shouldn't be in a junior team, is Yuki Tsunoda. He's been there for 4 seasons now. The reason for his contract extensions is most likely due to him being Japanese and backed by Honda, so I kind of understand that. He is in the way of a real diamond in the rough like Lawson, Hadjar or Iwasa. It's Horner and his political goals that caused those drivers to have contracts where it's debatable if they should have a contract in the first place. This mindset is ruining what Red Bull always stood for. The irony is that Red Bull used to be hated for being ruthless, but nowadays they're getting stick for being soft. 3. Money, money, money. Red Bull used to have 2 racing teams in the days before the budget cap, and money was never an issue, nor was it a goal. They easily spent $500 million a season to make sure their teams did what they do best. The money was made through the energy drinks company, and the F1 teams were only there for the glory. The advertising came with having the names on the cars anyway. Thanks to Christian Horner, we have a team on the grid now called Visa Cash App RB. With a Japanese driver to please Honda and an Australian driver because he's so marketable. I suppose Horner honestly believes he can get those drivers to perform better, but maybe he hasn't got such a good eye for talent. That's why it was always Helmut Marko's job. Me, and a lot of people with me, think that Visa Cash App RB is an abomination and has nothing to do with that beautiful team they once started with. Toro Rosso was a legendary team where Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen scored their first points. Vettel even won a race in that team before Red Bull even won. That's all undone now through politics and greed. And it's obvious I blame Christian Horner for that. But somehow he gets away with it because he's good in the media and he knows which strings to pull. I'm not falling for it. I'm not Sky Sports F1. 2. Scandal. Whenever we see Christian Horner in his home in shows like Drive to Survive, we are all led to believe he's the perfect husband and father. Dressed up in a nice Christmas sweater, we see idyllic pictures of him and his wife Jerry in his mansion being perfectly happy. Thanks to the power struggle and Horner's attempt to push Marko out of the team he started, a lot of dirt has been revealed on what Horner is really like. It's quite the opposite of what we see in the TV shows. This is why he was sued by his former personal assistant for controlling behavior, and a lot of stuff was leaked through the media. I agree it wasn't a pretty sight when and how it all unfolded. Horner showed amazing resilience and somehow beat it all and still has his position. This is something that really baffles me. Marko was nearly beheaded for saying people from different parts of the world react different to pressure, and Horner gets away with sexting with his assistant. I can hear you scream,
"Nothing was proven. He was cleared."
But it's also been said that money was offered way before it went public to make it go away. In any case, the reputation of the Red Bull racing team did get damaged, and I for one can't listen to any radio from Horner to Max or any other interview with Horner without thinking of what a mess he made of things. This situation gives the hyenas in the F1 paddock like Zak Brown ammunition to attack Red Bull for being evil and cheaters, and that's a very bad thing. I think Horner should have done the decent thing and should have stepped down from his public position. Wheatley could have taken the team principal position. But most of all, he should have fucking behaved properly. I'm not a gossip channel, so I'm not going to repeat the things that Mr. Horner did when he got involved with former Spice Girl Jerry Halliwell. I'll leave that up to yourself. One thing is for sure, there's a dark side to that funny little man. That's probably why he fits in the F1 paddock so well. 1. Exodus. A handful of big names have left before the recent news came out. This includes Dan Fallows, who left for Aston Martin, and Rob Marshall to McLaren. Now it's not certain they left due to the unrest at Red Bull, but Adrian Newey and Jonathan Wheatley are 2 huge names that have left Red Bull recently. It will obviously be denied that Horner and his behavior have anything to do with them leaving, but Horner's reactions about it are quite telling. On Wheatley leaving, he basically said that Wheatley was expensive, so it was a good thing he was leaving, so he could promote cheaper people. On Newey leaving, he was a bit stoic as well, saying that Newey wasn't that much involved anymore in the first place. I think those are strange reactions about two people who have been there for 18 years through thick and thin. A while ago, Max Verstappen backed Helmut Marko by linking his position in Red Bull with Helmut Marko and even signing a contract that stipulates that. The suggestions were made that he could replace Hamilton at Mercedes, and Toto Wolff especially is keen on signing the current world champion. Horner reacted to that in the same fashion in response to Verstappen suggesting he'd leave if Marko did. Horner told Sky Sports F1, "No individual is bigger than the team, and anybody who doesn't want to be at Red Bull can't be forced to stay, including Verstappen. It's like anything in life, you can't force somebody to be somewhere just because of a piece of paper." It's clear that Horner doesn't mind losing the best driver on the grid to get his way. His ambition overrides what this is doing to Red Bull in the short term. He's set his goal and he's determined to get it no matter what. He's backed by the Thai owners who came up with the recipe for their famous energy drink and left the Austrian side to do the production and advertising. It was Mateschitz, with his passion for racing and sports in general, that made Red Bull the brand it is now. So I'm a bit reluctant to side with that fraction of the company when it comes to sporting achievements. All in all, the part Christian Horner is playing in the possible downfall of Red Bull isn't pretty. In his mind, he thinks he's capable of building up again what has been lost in his rise to the top. And who knows, Red Bull might be dominant again in the 2030s. For the immediate future, it looks like he's ruining the team. I'll finish with one of his own quotes. "Everybody has a role to play, no matter what that role is." Subscribe. Take care now. Doei doei.